There are so many games on the original PlayStation, and I want to get to every one of them eventually at some point in time, or almost all of them, maybe not the sports crap, but there's so many games on this console that are just kind of buried in time and definitely need more light shed on them. Survival horror is just a genre I have not spoken of much on this console, except for Silent Hill. That's about the only game I've covered, and that was like a year ago, so long time has passed and overdue for another survival horror video. There's so many games of that genre on this console, and it was one of the defining genres for the system of the time. One game that caught my interest though years ago was Galerians, and this game just looks very interesting with all the FMV cutscenes it's got going on and the whole scope and setting. I bought a copy of this game recently and did a full playthrough on it and definitely want to give my thoughts on it, because this one is definitely a weird one. So sit back, relax, let's talk about Galerians for the original PlayStation. Galerians was released in the year 2000 only for the original PlayStation in North America as well as PAL regions. It was developed by Polygon Magic and published by Crave. Polygon Magic was just kind of one of those under-the-radar companies that made video games back in the day, and they didn't really make a whole lot of stuff. They made stuff like Incredible Crisis for the PS1, Versus, a fighting game on the PS1. They even made arcade ports of stuff like Ghost Squad for the Nintendo Wii. The story of this game is pretty crazy. It takes place in the 26th century, so very far into the future. You play as this guy named Rion, and you're this 14-year-old boy. You wake up on a hospital bed in some medical room, and you're just wondering what the hell is going on and why you're there. You hear the voice of the girl that's talking to you, and you gotta figure out what is going on and why you're there. Long story short, you have these telepathy powers that you notice, and you eventually find out what Galerians is. It's basically just these kids with psychic powers, pretty much is what it is, in a nutshell. He wants to see who the voice in his head is, as well as just figuring out what's happening. As soon as you start playing the game, you're greeted with tons of cutscenes, and by the way, there are a lot of FMVs in this game. There's actually 3 discs, and it's like a 5 or 6 hour game if that tells you anything. The gameplay is definitely what you think it is. It is a fixed camera, tank control type of game here that is survival horror. For those who don't know what tank controls are, it's whenever you hold up to move forward, and then you use left and right to turn around, and then down to go back. This game does have DualShock support, but it's kind of useless because it doesn't do really anything different here. X is your action button. This is when you'll click on stuff to pick up items, as well as talk to NPCs sometimes and all that stuff. Your select button brings up your menu in this game, and it actually stays on the same screen as you already were, and it's a very small menu, and it's kind of a nice touch. You don't have to go between screens. Holding square while you move helps you run, or you can hold the left trigger and it'll auto-run for you. Circle will pull up your minimap. Triangle is your scan telepathy. You use this a lot in the game. It's kind of how you solve puzzles as well as figure things out. Lastly, R1 is how you attack in this game. You use your psychic powers that you can use. When you start the game and you're trapped in the medical room, you'll see this notepad and it'll have a bunch of stuff on there and like drugs and stuff. This essentially just explains to you what all the items do in the game. This game is a survival horror game all the way through, so you'll find items all the time, so you'll be clicking the X button around rooms, into objects and places, fighting enemies, as well as avoiding them because you can do that too, as well as solving puzzles along the way. A brief overview of the items you'll see all the time are these recovery capsules. You know what they do. They heal your health. There's no introduction for that all the way actually, so it's best to use it when you're on low health. You'll find these things called Delmators. These things drain your AP meter, which I'll get to that here in a moment. Your weapons, psychic powers, you'll find this stuff called Nowcon, Red, or G Felon, and basically these fill up your meter you see on the top screen that you have selected. There's also additional stuff here like this drug called Skip. It's the new stuff kids are taking these days. Nah, I'm just kidding. This stuff will increase your psychic powers and go to level 2, doing double damage for a little bit of time. Your HUD is very easy to understand. HP is very obvious, then below at the very bottom is like Nowcon Red, as I mentioned earlier. Nowcon is like a force push, Red is like a flame blast, and D-Grav can pull enemies up in the air and then slam them on the ground. The biggest one though is the AP meter, and what this is this meter is definitely your enemy in the game. This meter will go up over time as you move around the levels, getting through, and even fighting enemies, and often in the game, it'll fill up all the way and start highlighting and flashing. Once you hit the R1 button when this is full, you have what's called a short. and pretty much you just kind of go into chaos mode and you lose control of psychic powers. You kill almost anything in sight as long as you don't get hit, but the big drawback is you're permanently stuck in this state and your HP is slowly draining down and you move half the speed you did before. The only way to clear this before dying is using a Delmator, so that is really your enemy in this game, is that gauge. Because if you don't have any Delmators and no recovery capsules, I don't know what you would do. You'd have to go back to a last save. You have different environments in this game throughout. The first part is the Michelangelo Hospital, and this is probably most of the game, at least the first 30% or so. Then you have your house you go to. Not a lot of enemies here, mostly just exploring, finding clues and keys. And other places too, where you're in a hotel and you're navigating through rooms talking to people, and it's very creepy. The game varies in enemies. You'll see a lot of security guards, scientists in the beginning, as well as these robots that are a pain in the ass to fight. Then you'll find these zombie dudes that'll come out and attack you often as well. The game definitely keeps going, because FMV cutscenes, they happen a lot. Like maybe every other 5 minutes or so, you'll encounter an FMV cutscene. Kind of thought it was a nice touch. You don't see this in too many PS1 games of this amount of quantity. One of the key things people look for in survival horror games are definitely the puzzles. This game definitely has puzzles in it. I will say though, I do think the puzzles are a little easy in this game. They're not very hard to solve. Sometimes you gather stuff like these blocks here with these eagles, snake kind of emblems, and you gotta match them together in this one room. There's stuff like the security lock you gotta solve and figure out the number, and even stuff like this one here. This is a knock you have to do, and you have to do the knock correctly with the X button. I thought that was kind of cool to do that. They're not bad puzzles at all by any means, but they're definitely not on the level of other horror games you've played like Silent Hill. Save rooms are placed very well in this game. You'll find them at the right time, and you can go back to them if you feel like you need to save real quick before you do something that you haven't expected yet. Of course, we gotta talk about boss fights too, because there's a good bit of boss fights in this game, like over 5 or so, and the boss fights are pretty cool. Nothing too crazy, but with the tank controls, it definitely makes it a little challenging to fight them. So you gotta be very patient on how you do it, coordinate very well, know when to use your recovery capsules, and you're all set. Galerians is definitely a cool game and definitely worth checking out. I like the scope of this game. It's definitely got a weird vibe, and I like how it's in the future, and you're kind of detained in this psychological place, and you break out, finding answers, meeting new characters along the way, and it's just a good time and entertaining. I thought it was a cool twist to see a different gameplay approach here with this one. Instead of relying really on health items, which you kind of do, but they're kind of easy to come by, you're going against the AP meter the whole time. That is really your enemy. This could be a deal breaker for some, I could see, but trust me on this, I played through it. They definitely give you just enough to get by, as long as you make multiple saves, which I do that in a lot of horror games anyway. This game is definitely not perfect. There's a lot of loading in this game. There's a lot of loading sequences between doors and stuff, but that was common back in the day. A lot of FMVs, some people may not care for this stuff. I thought it was cool, but it definitely could be a little bit of a patience battle with that. It's got a little age too with how it plays, but I mean, if you play a lot of games like this, I mean, it's kind of really across the board here on if you like this kind of game style or not. And as mentioned, the AP meter could be a deal breaker. Some people might get frustrated with how that works. I'll be honest, I died in the beginning of the game because I had no idea what was going on. I thought it was kind of funny. It's a little bit on the short side of a game like this. You could probably beat this within like 6 to 7 hours if you're just casually playing it, or for the speedrunners, like 4 to 5 hours. There's also only one ending to this game, so it kind of dampens the replay value just a little bit. With all that being said though, this game is definitely worth your time to check out, and it's kind of a one-of-a-kind game on the system, at least in terms of the setting. If you want to own this game physically in your collection, it kind of varies where you live. It's kind of expensive in the United States, almost $100, and PAL regions it's like 40, which isn't too bad. It also got a sequel, Galerians Ash, which is on the PlayStation 2, and I definitely want to check that out someday and even maybe review it here. And a fun fact too, this game had a 3-episode deal and it was brought to us on MTV. Thought that was kind of a cool thing to look up. Well, that's all I have to say about this game. Maybe I'll go to the laundromat and see if they got any skips so I can take it home and use some. I appreciate you guys for watching this video and sticking all the way to the end. You got anything to say? Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear what you got. As always, thanks for tuning in. Y'all take it easy.